So we're back after it must have been a 3-week break again.
Yeah, I think so.
And today we are reviewing Metabolical by Robert Lustig, which is all about processed food and the damage it's doing to our health, as well as the systems and incentives that lead to the, I guess, no other better word than saying proliferation of processed food in our modern day diet, and how this is basically killing us. It's pretty morbid topic and book. My take on the author himself is he has quite controversial opinions, which some people might find controversial because it's going against kind of, the mainstream perception of things, or the mainstream media, let's just say. And he writes a bunch of different other books which we haven't touched on, which I'm now intrigued just to read because of this book. Criticizing sugar and criticizing I think one of his books called like The Hacking of the American Mind, which I can only imagine is some form of dissection of the propaganda that everybody's been fed. But I know me and you both really enjoyed this book. It offered different perspectives, or perspectives we maybe weren't used to or have heard before. Obviously, from what we're told as a society is like the perfect diet, or that certain things aren't that bad for you, and that the best way to lose weight is just to count calories, for example. And it's more complicated than just that. And actually, it's not what's in the food, it's what we do to the food that actually is causing all these issues. I thought it was a great book. It was like, I think we had a chat just a second ago about how it was quite repetitive and it wasn't particularly well structured. And a lot of it was kind of just a long form rant. But there is some, interesting tidbits to be taken out, and, actual practical applications for how to sort of improve your diet nearer the end of the book. As well as actually some good, if you haven't seen the biology or understand the biology before, his description of how things or how your body works and how it interacts with these sort of different types of molecules that are being added to the food, etc., is really quite interesting. I would say maybe you would need to have some form of biology background, but he does make it quite simple, at least from my perspective. But there's a lot to take in, right? Like, you could read this book 15, 20 times and you probably still wouldn't 100% grasp all the intricacies of the processes he talks about, because when we even said this, we're not biologists ourselves, so it's not something that's going to stick in our mind very easily. But I think the point of the book is less about the biology and just more about the overriding point that we're kind of being not fed lies, we're being fed, first of all, shit food, which is causing lots of health problems, and then we're kind of being told not complete fake lies, but stuff that's covering up the actual truth, if that makes sense. And pushing us towards diets which aren't good for us, because they're the cheapest, or they're the most addictive, and therefore they're the most profitable, for example, right? There's a lot of references to bad incentive systems and corporate greed, etc., which I think is a theme throughout this man's books. So yeah, that was a long rant just to say, it was a good book, and I'm excited to get into it.
I really enjoyed it. I thought, we've all heard bits now and then saying that you shouldn't eat processed foods, they're bad for you. You come across these things, and now I think this was probably the first book that I've read that kind of jumped into it in depth. And I think the issue is with tackling a topic like this, and the fact that it is controversial to the mainstream narrative of it's fine, and as we'll go through this book, we'll see that some establishments and organizations actually suggest that you should eat these things, or that they're not bad for you. But I think to dive into this kind of topic, you can't just cover the specific topic. You have to kind of give it background, which is kind of what he does in this book, right? Like you just said, he goes over the history of a bit of modern medicine, in particular nutrition, and kind of leads you to this point of what's happening with processed foods now, and why is it impacting our health so badly? And so I can understand why there was so much in this book, and it's quite hard to get your head around because it is a kind of like a paradigm shift to think, wow, okay, I'm starting to see where these systems first originated and how their like, you know, behavior at the time when they were created has kind of led to this point now, and how we're suffering from it.
You're also making a good point now. I forgot, because obviously I think it was near the end of the book, wasn't it, where he was talking about the, like you said, the history of the system, such as the US, like what's the best way to put it? Like, it's not the health and safety, but the food regulation systems that have been set up, and like their original purposes, right? And how their sort of incentives or interests were aligned with, you know, food groups, for example, who wanted to sell specific amounts of food, right? And when you understand these were the ways they were set up and the problems they were set up to solve, etc., you realize that, you know, maybe they don't have, I guess you could say, the truth or the people's health as their, like, you know, their sole operandi or the sole reason for their existence, right? Because they were set up originally to do that. They were set up for another purpose. And I think the interesting background behind these things that we don't really know. I mean, obviously we just see like faceless systems of, you know, regulatory bodies that you just assume are regulatory bodies that are there to help you, but then you see, you know, from constant food pyramids they like send out, and then you look at the sort of science at the moment, you see the second it doesn't really match up. So why is it that, you know, all the science is pointing the opposite direction, but these regulatory bodies still continue to promote the same message, or a slightly changed message, but, you know, the underlying message is still the same, right? And then, like you said, the only way you can understand that is through the history, and like that takes time to explain. And then there's also all the biological systems. It's a bit of a whirlwind of a book, isn't it? It's just
I think it was a great book to kind of introduce it, and also like set a kind of structure that you can apply to other areas as well. Like I could also imagine that the same thing would go for a lot of other areas that have maybe controversial, right? But it's like, now, okay, if I was to look at something else, I'd probably go to like its history. I'd look at the vested interests at the time, and then kind of compare that to the current scientific research and what it's saying and what's the actual narrative. Gives you a good kind of like guide, if you get what I mean.
For sure. No, it's one of these. It reminds me a bit of you know how, you know, science is taught in school. They kind of teach you just the theories, and they don't really teach you what the original experiment was looking for, or the reasoning behind the problem they were trying to solve, which
you're just supposed to accept it.
Yeah, exactly that. They don't tell you the context behind the problems that they were trying to solve and how they came up with the theory, for example. And it's the same thing here. How can you ever understand how something works unless you understand why it was there or set up in the first place? Which
precisely. So, should we get into it?
Yeah, we'll just get into sort of introduction. So I thought the interesting first bit, which was, it came across pretty strong, but it made a strong impression, right? It's the food has become poison. So he was saying that this food writer, Mark Bittman, has made a striking observation, stating that according to the definition of food, which is a substance that provides nutrition and promotes growth. I mean, you think about this two very specific things. Much of what is produced by industrial agriculture can be considered poison rather than food. While pesticides are often associated with food toxicity, they represent just the tip of the iceberg, accounting for only about 10% of the issue. The remaining 90% is attributed to the processing procedures that have transformed what was once food into a slow-acting poison. So understanding the alchemy of how food itself has become toxic is crucial in comprehending the current state of our food system and its impact on our health. The book delves into the intricacies of how food is being processed and transformed, shedding light on the fact that it's not just what's in the food that matters, but rather what has been done by the food. I thought that was interesting, because if a food is then something that promotes nutrition and growth, if something doesn't do that, then it can be, labeled as poison if it does the opposite. Sorry, so to speak.
It's actually crazy.
And if food is actually doing that, then that is technically poison, right? It's similar to, we've spoken many times before on this podcast and in person about how alcohol can be technically defined as, like toxic poison or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting to think that food can then technically be something you ingest, can obviously be poisonous for you, right? It just depends on dosages.
A poison hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, exactly that. So what's the next? So we got the difference between nutrition and food science. So I thought this was a bit interesting as well. I didn't really know there was any. For me, I thought nutrition was food science.
I didn't know the difference.
Yeah, nutrition and food science are distinct but interconnected fields. While nutrition focuses on the changes that occur to food from the moment it enters the mouth until it reaches the cells in our body, food science encompasses the various processes that take place from the ground to the mouth. Both are interdependent, yet often misunderstood by the general public due to their complexity. And I thought this was interesting as well, like the point that food processing, which plays a significant role in shaping the nutritional quality of our food, as we'll talk about later, such as, the removal of fiber from food, right? Mm-hmm. This is not adequately disclosed on food labels. So the nutrition label, facts label, primarily provides information on the composition of the food, which doesn't reveal the full story. What truly matters is the understanding of the extent of food processing and modifications that have been done to the food, which I thought was really quite interesting. Yeah. You kind of like look at this percentage-based composition of your food, but it doesn't take into account what's been taken away from it, what's been added to it, etc. Right?
Yeah, I'd never even thought of it for some reason. Like,
yeah,
you're always told to look at I can see the E numbers on the back of the label or the amount of sugar.
You can see how much percentage fat or whatever.
Yeah. But you don't even contemplate like the processing methods, because realistically you're so far detached from it, you don't even know what kind of processing methods.
And there's always processing methods, right? Because as we'll talk about later on in the book, like anything that lasts on a shelf for over a couple of weeks has been processed in some form to allow it to not go off in that period of time, right?
Yeah,
it's that I think we spoke about this before in the podcast. It's like the McDonald's chips, whatever. You can leave them for months, and fucking bacteria doesn't eat it. So like, if bacteria is not eating it, then can you imagine what that's doing to your body? So yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But yeah,
it really is. So then onto like the scope of the book. So this book delves into the intricate web of connections between various aspects of our lives, from food to biochemistry, biochemistry to disease, disease to medicine, medicine to demographics, demographics to the economy, economy to agriculture, agriculture to climate, climate to the planet, and back to food once again. So like we said at the beginning, it encompasses quite a lot. And through these interrelated factors, two undeniable truths come to light. Firstly, the changes in food processing that started several decades ago have triggered a downward spiral of declining health, economic challenges, and environmental degradation, with the impact becoming more pronounced over time and exacerbating by the disparities highlighted by, for instance, COVID-19. Secondly, in today's society, food holds a unique and immediate potential for creating positive change. Neglecting to address the role of food in our lives would only perpetuate the rise of chronic diseases and premature deaths and contribute to societal and planetary crises. Fixing our food systems is a crucial step towards a healthier, more sustainable future. So yeah, the book covers quite a lot, and I think it even involves a bit of politics as well. And like I said, you can't really touch on this topic without touching on those different factors, because they're so inextricably linked.
I was going to say they're so interrelated, right? Yeah, of course, yeah.
You pull on one thread and it pulls all the others, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it is all linked, 100%, and like they all influence each other with to some form or degree. I think the argument is more about how much they influence each other, right? And
exactly,
yeah. So there are two keys to understanding the breakdown of our health and healthcare model. I thought this was pretty interesting, and we both, I think, share the same mindset on this.
Yeah.
But the first key is that the medical establishment doesn't openly share, and it is that the drugs are not designed to treat chronic diseases, but merely to alleviate the symptoms associated with them. If you think about just from the premise of a common cold, right? When you take stuff like paracetamol and ibuprofen, namely, you're not really there to fight the actual, they're not helping you fight the sort of illness or infection you have. They're there to reduce the pain, right? And that's what's usually prescribed. Obviously, you can take stuff like antibiotics, right, as well. But fine, there is some cases where they're actually treating the actual cause, but the majority of the time, it's treating your symptoms. And I was going to say, we discussed before with the inflammation. Inflammation is actually your body's response, and fucking ibuprofen's an anti-inflammatory. So what you're doing is you're reducing your body's response, or you're weakening the response to reduce your pain, basically, right?
Absolutely. And I think even building on that, let's say it was to cure the root problem. Okay. The issue is that you're taking something external that cures the root problem without your body needing to make it for you. And so we see that time and time again, where your body will start to go oh, something, it's already in my system, I'll stop making it. I mean, the same thing goes with, other chemicals that we take in, like nicotine, right? Nicotine is supposed to help us, concentrate. But if we're puffing on vapes all the time, then essentially our brain goes, okay, I'll stop creating it. And then because there's huge amounts, right?
It's like anything like that, isn't it? It's like anything is, what's the word? It's exogenous, isn't it? And endogenous is within you, I think.
Yeah.
Like if you supplement it yourself, then your body's going to be like, oh yeah, okay, cool, we've got enough now. We don't need to keep producing this. If anything, if we keep producing this, we've got too much.
Exactly. It's a balancing mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah. So the second revelation as well is the one that the food industry would rather keep hidden. And that is, all food is inherently beneficial, but it is the processing and alteration of food that can have negative effects on our health. For example, in the past, our guts were populated with beneficial bacteria that thrived on fiber-rich foods and contributed to our overall well-being. However, modern processing food has stripped much of the fiber from our diets, leaving these bacteria starving and leading them to devour the protective barrier on our intestinal cells. This in turn sets the stage for inflammation and the dreaded leaky gut syndrome. And then I had a quick note here, which is, I've actually got this book by Michael Pollan, the food book. It's like rules for food. I can't remember what it's called, but he has 7 words for healthy eating and can be restipulated into these 6 words. 1, protect the liver, and then 2, feed the gut.
Yeah.
The
and
next
that's very much the ethos of this whole book, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly that. Basically railing for sort of high fiber diets, right? And it's funny because, as we touched later on, it's kind of one of the biggest takeaways I had from this is the fact that food companies, food processing companies seem to love to remove fiber. And my understanding is because fiber is one of the things that causes food to go off. So they remove the fiber to, increase shelf life, because that increases potential profitability, because they can hold stock for longer and got more chance of selling, the food stock. But the fiber is actually the thing which lines your gut before your body digests things and protects your gut, right? And so basically we're suffering from a really low fiber diet in comparison to our ancestors.
Absolutely.
And so it's funny because we haven't touched on this book yet, but I talked to you before about the Why We Get Fat book with Gary Taubes, whatever his name is. And a lot of he's rating mainly against sugar in that book. But one of his things is, and it's the same with that glucose revolution girl, Jessie Sharpe, I can't remember her name. But they all talk the same thing, which is having high fiber diet, can they're not completely offset, but helps when you're eating sugar as well. Like it helps digest it or reduce the glucose spike, for example, the insulin spike. And this is stuff that we're, missing from our diets now. And it's funny because what's on the rise? Diabetes.
Absolutely.
Correlation doesn't equal causation, but it gives you sort of, hints that there might be a link.
No, absolutely. I find it so fascinating because once again, it's, fiber is found in pretty much any natural food, and you're taking that whole thing out, which is a whole aspect of it. And so then you're depriving your diet of a whole component that, would normally be there. So how, we've evolved to constantly have that. And now suddenly you're giving food where it has a whole component taken away from it. Of course, that's going to affect you. Right.
Of course. Yeah. Your body or your systems you've built around that component always being there.
Yeah.
And therefore without it being there in the correct percentages, right? Because you're usually eating it probably at in a range of percentages where there's a certain percent of fiber in most foods you eat, right? And then if it's going down to 0, I think he gives an example in this book, which I think I made a note on, but we'll touch on it later, with the idea of juices as well. People think, as soon as you juice something, you're removing all the fiber from the fruit.
Yeah.
So the one thing that helps you digest the sugar, in a better way, for lack of a better word, you're just removing that benefit because you're juicing it. And I was just like, wow, okay, that makes sense. And obviously with the fruit, for fruit companies as well, it's great. Juice it, and you made more product, and it lasts longer, and you can sell it, and obviously it solves the problem for supermarkets. That's another thing. This is why you were saying about everything's linked. The economy's linked because somebody's got to sell that food, right? Somebody sells it to somebody else, and then somebody has to figure out how to sell this, and somebody else has to figure out how to sell this. And one of the problems obviously they face is, shit, if I don't sell this quick enough, it's going to go wrong, and nobody's going to buy it. So how do I make people how do I make it at least give me 30 days to sell it? I can just remove the fiber. Oh, fantastic. I can add some other stuff in it that keeps it from going off or whatever. Okay, but what is going off? It's bacteria feeding off it because it's nutritional and it's allowing the bacteria to grow. So if it doesn't allow bacteria to grow, what the fuck is it going to
Yeah,
do to
exactly.
us? Right? Like,
Exactly.
by that logic, it's
I think what's also interesting is that by taking a biochemistry perspective towards food, we isolate it and we forget about its connection to all the other components. So in this regard, right, take fiber and its connection to the other properties of some food, right? And I remember reading, I can't remember if it was in this book or I think it might have been in a different book, but he probably touched on it in this. But normally you can't have such concentrated amounts of things because you would get full on fiber, right? So you couldn't have concentrated amounts of sugar from like sugarcane, because to have the same amount of sugar that's in like a Coke, you'd have to eat so much sugarcane that you wouldn't be able to, because you just get full, right? And once again, that just shows the relationship between fiber and the other like properties, and how it helps you not take in concentrated amounts of things that are normally quite have a negative effect. And I think that's just it's interesting to look at the components and how they relate to one another.
And it's funny you say that, because it actually helps explain. I was saying the other day that book, was it Endure? No, it's not Endure. It was, in fact, it was the exercise, and then we did another book on was it exercise? Anyway, I was telling you that guy who was arguing against the sugar thing, because I was telling you obviously why we get fat was talking about how sugar was causing us to be fat. And then this other book was talking about actually it's not sugar, but it's how our brains have become dysregulated and we crave sugar more and we eat more sugar from it. And that will link to what you're saying there, where if you're having enough fiber, your brain leptin signals or whatever aren't dysregulated because you feel full for that amount of sugar you're having. So you would never have the need to be like, oh, I need to eat this much sugar, etc. So it kind of like links that as well. It's it does make sense. It does make sense.
It's really interesting, I think. The whole fiber thing, and
this whole system has led to this thing called what Robert Lustig calls the immoral hazard. So for years, the healthcare field has grappled with the concept of moral hazard, which refers to a situation where the one responsible profits from the suffering of the victim, akin to the economic form of Schadenfreude. However, Robert Lustig realized that the issue is much more pervasive. He introduced a new term, immoral hazard, to describe a situation where the perpetrator intentionally manipulates the system to generate profits, fully aware that the victim will suffer as a result. The term metabolical is a combination, therefore, of metabolic, which pertains to the inner workings of the body, and diabolical, which refers to the sinister workings of the food industry. You can tell his opinion on that, right? Yeah. The sinister workings of the food industry, the pharmaceutical companies, and the government agencies. Despite their claims of being on your side, these entities are primarily concerned with their own interests, and you, as the victim, are often subject to their propaganda. So this is where the politics comes in a little bit. And to be fair, it's one of those things that I've said to you many times before. I'm not a big believer in like really clear cut conspiracy theory based worldviews, but I'm a big believer in incentive systems, or things that cause people to act in certain ways. We see it all the time, right? And if the systems are set in a way that people can benefit, people are going to, it's not rig it, but they're going to take advantage. And therefore I can see why he would have qualms with this. And, if you read the book, you can kind of make up your own mind on what you think is going on, etc. It's pretty damning. It's pretty depressing, makes you pretty cynical, I guess you could say. There's many things. So if you want a rosy view of the world and everything, don't read this book as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult to not see it as like malicious, because there's just so much evidence to show that the system is flawed. I mean, much. I mean, just like already the vested interest from money, but that's not even starting to talk about the vast amounts of research that suggests that these things are bad for people, and the constant incline in like health problems, and I mean it's all there,
but it's the classic, isn't it? They use, I think he even touched on it later on in the book, and I think we will get to it, this idea of the cigarette playbook, and how they manipulated or used propaganda to convince people that it's actually their fault for like addictions. So like we place a heavy load on sort of personal responsibility. So therefore these guys can be like, wash their hands, sleep well at night, because they're like, do you know what, at the end of the day, fine, we may have made the food more addictive. We may have reduced healthcare, but at the end of the day, you still chose to eat it. I didn't make you do it. The market decided it was what was, what they wanted, right? Because we can't be trusted to do things that we want, because if we do things we want, we take it to excess, right? Because unfortunately our biology takes us to the point where it thinks we're like trying to survive, right? And this is where like the fiber and stuff comes in, because what we're doing is we're effectively dysregulating our biological systems, causing us to, what's the word, like go to extreme lengths to do specific things, like extreme lengths of dopamine scrolling, extreme lengths of eating absolute shit. Like that, that's not good for you, but because it feels so good at the moment, you eat more of it, right? And you're dysregulating systems which would have usually kept you in check, which now can't, because you're in an environment that your body was never designed to be in. And TV, it's interesting. I don't think, once again, it's malicious, but there's a lot of heavy duty rationalization that goes on. That's not okay. That's the best way of putting it. I don't think they're going like, we're gonna fuck all these people. It's more like, I'm getting my bag, and it's people's problem. It's not my problem. They should, they should be better than they are. They can take responsibility. If they can buy this, they can eat it. That's their choice.
But that is where
there comes a point where it's not a choice, right? Because as you talk about addiction and stuff.
I agree with products, as in like an actual market and economy that's, that is selling a product. But for guidelines or establishments or organizations that are supposedly saying that they know everything and that they are giving guidelines to the people, and those guidelines aren't right, because then that goes against the very thing that they stand for, because they're saying we understand what health is, you should be eating this, and yet they're in bed with the other people. And that's where it's difficult.
I mean, once again, it's very hard to sort of not see that when you see the fact that there's, or as he tries to argue in this book, so much science against the sort of mainstream view on what a good diet is, and then these people still come up with the same, they kind of try and rationalize certain things. They try and, what's the word, like, is it red herring or whatever, you sort of say something else, like you're trying to divert attention away from the actual, the bad stuff, and you're trying to blame something else type of thing.
Or try and have like plausible deniability, where you're like, well, we haven't quite got enough research to suggest that this is an issue.
So well, let's get stuck in then. So part 1, debunking modern medicine. So chapter 1, treatment is not cure, it is not even treatment. So I like this analogy. When faced with a wasp buzzing around your attic, you have two options: kill the wasp or get rid of the wasp nest. The latter approach involves working upstream of the problem, addressing the root cause, while the former only provides a temporary solution to the immediate symptom. Similarly, in healthcare, we've been predominantly working downstream, focusing on treating the symptoms of diseases rather than addressing the underlying causes. And it's funny because I remember reading there's a book called Upstream by Chip, or one of them, Chip or Dan Heath, one of the two. And he talks a lot about how one of the reasons why these problems are so much harder to tackle is it's harder to face something that's indirect, or it's harder to tackle something and prove that something that has like a delay from when it happens to when the end result is. So for example, right, you got a headache, you take a pill and you feel better. It's pretty obvious that what you've done is helped, as in relieve the pain, right? But when somebody's like really fat and obese, obviously we now know it's probably because they're overeating, right? But it's harder to prove these like small events they've recurringly done again and again lead to that, if that makes sense. And there's more room for like manipulation between the two, and therefore solving these problems is harder, because it could, like, for example, some people could be like, okay, I did overeat a little bit, but I didn't overeat too much, therefore is it my genes? Is it something, like, you get what I mean? There's other opportunities or other explanations within it. And I thought that's quite an interesting point, that, and there's also not sexy to treat that stuff because it's not instant, and people are fucking, they want instant results, right? So it's
that's what I was going to say, is like, surely the issue of solving a problem is partly dependent on how quick you can solve it. Like you said, with a headache, you could take a pill and it's gone in like 5-10 minutes. Whereas like you can't just snap your fingers and it's skinny.
It's funny, isn't it? It's like, let's say somebody's been smoking, like, I don't know, I'm going to make an extreme example, like 10-15 years, they go running, they're out of breath, they're like, oh God, I'm unfit. Or is it, I've been smoking for 15 years and I, haven't really exercised very much. Do you get what I mean? Like there's like two explanations. One of them's like smaller in scope, and one of them is more broad and like sort of, explains more, let's just say. I feel like as a society, we kind of just sort of go back to like the very small problem. Like, oh God, I feel tired today. Oh, is it because I'm chronically inflamed because all I do is eat, lots of sugar and my glucose spikes all over the place. Do you get what I mean? It's it's almost like we default back to like the sort of smaller problem we can solve, which is, I got a headache, so I'll take a paracetamol. Not, okay, I've had a headache 20 times in a row now. It might be something else.
No, exactly. So on to the next. So modern medicine is not the solution to the problems. Modern medicine is the problem. So it is commonly accepted that modern medicine is focused on maintaining people's health. The prevailing belief is that people today are living longer than those a century ago. And since healthy individuals tend to live longer, it is assumed that people today are healthier. However, is this assumption accurate? Data shows that patients with 5 or more chronic conditions spend significantly more time on health services, as much as 14 times more compared to those with no chronic conditions. Despite this fact, the debate around the merits of Medicare for all continues. The crux of the issue is that modern medicine aims to fix healthcare, but fails to address the root cause of poor health, which is often related to diet and nutrition. While there is a lot of talk about healthcare, there is limited focus on improving health and hardly any attention given to the role of food in health. I find this just so crazy that and he talks about this more in the book, but it's the same thing, whether it's in the US or here, that like doctors just aren't trained much in nutrition. I mean, surely the first thing that you think about is like eating well, get good sleep, exercise. I mean, it's surely most of your time should be focused on that, and then the peripheral things, if they're not sorted out, then you start to specialize in those areas. But it's crazy. They have like, well, he talks about it later on, but I think it's only like a very few hours spent on nutrition, which is just fucking crazy.
Well, it's nuts if you think about like food as well as what you put in your body every day to, like you say, maintain and grow, right? And if you've got something wrong with you, there's probably something wrong with your maintenance, and therefore there's probably something wrong with your food and your lifestyle choices, and therefore that's probably the highest leverage point to start to fix problems. But it's straight away like you come in and it's here's something to treat that headache of yours. Don't you worry about it. Go home, get some rest. We'll see you soon. Like, it's not like, okay, well, what have you been eating recently? Maybe let's just eat more veg, And obviously there is, I'm doing it right. I do think there is more public health campaigns around stuff like that nowadays, like the whole campaign around 5 portions of fruit and veg, etc. I guess one of the problems is just that, I don't know, what is one of the problems? I'm just trying to think. Maybe if you had like, I was going to say shaming related to it would actually help, like, because it's like a cultural thing as well. If you felt shamed to eat loads of sugar, you'd eat less sugar, and surely people go like, oh, don't shame me for this. But shame is a social tool used to get people to act in a certain way, right? Like, you feel shame if you murdered somebody. You don't say, oh, don't shame me because I murdered somebody. I'm not saying that you can put the two together, because obviously one's worse than the other, but shame is a tool, and we now come to this point where we're like, oh, let's protect everybody who just basically, eats selfishly and then causes a massive, everybody else has to pick up the tab for their bad health bill. You know what I mean? It's just, it's crazy. Exactly. It's crazy. It's like, you should actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say, like, because technically if somebody's really, really ill caused by their own sort of, choices, everybody else or society picks up the bill. So we should collectively encourage each other, right? To be like, come on guys, like, what's going on here? Like, if you're struggling to eat a bit more healthy, then we should fucking all help each other out. But
most of the people who are in hospital are people that have neglected their health, and then it's not the first time they've been there either. I mean, when I talk to Anya, like, some people have like, they come in after drinking bottles and bottles of like alcohol to the point where they just can't function, and it will be their like 7th time in. I mean, we operate with a national health system. Obviously America's not like that, and I'd be interested to look at like the difference between the two and how people use the systems differently, because obviously I'm assuming you have like insurance or whatnot, but
you have to have insurance, I'm pretty sure.
Because it'd be so expensive. But still, it's just like, there's just so many people, just like you just said, 14 times more if you have like chronic conditions compared to people who don't have any. It's nuts.
But it is absolutely nuts. It's just we can rant about it forever, how things should be, but unfortunately they're not that way. So
so it is important to note that modern medicine excels in screening, diagnostics, and treatment. However, it falls short in preventing or reversing non-communicable diseases, NCDs, leading to a decline in overall health. As a result, more people are living longer, but not necessarily healthier, leading to increased healthcare costs in the United States. Efforts to improve medical resource allocation or efficiency miss the point, as they primarily focus on treatment after the fact. The key to truly addressing health issues lies in addressing the underlying causes, including nutrition and lifestyle factors, to prevent and reverse chronic diseases rather than simply treating their symptoms. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Couldn't really agree more. So chapter 2, modern medicine treats symptoms, not disease. So I've got a little note here about insulin 101. So we all need insulin. It's the hormone that allows glucose, your body's primary source of fuel, to enter the cells of your body so it can be burned. But insulin resistance occurs when the cells in your muscles, fat, and liver no longer respond to the insulin signal. The glucose, therefore, can't get in the cells, and the cells are starving. So they send signals to the pancreas to crank out even more insulin, but to no avail. The glucose builds up in your blood at the same time that your cells are starving, adding insult to injury. You'll see that this condition is the underlying cause of most of our troubles. Insulin resistance is the primary defect in the metabolic syndrome, the cluster of NCDs, which I've always quite an interesting point about, like non-communicatable diseases, like diseases without a name, right? So to speak, or diseases that are outside of the sort of GP or standard doctor sort of diagnostic procedure. So insulin resistance manifests itself in a myriad of tissues and ways which may vary from person to person, which I thought was quite interesting. So then obesity is a red herring, which is an interesting point as well. So obesity is like a red herring, a clue that distracts from the real issue. While doctors often target obesity as the problem, it is actually just another symptom, not the root cause of the metabolic dysfunction. Contrary to common belief, it's not always that you gain weight and then get sick. In fact, 80% of the time it's the other way around. People often get sick first, such as having metabolic syndrome, which leads them to insulin resistance and high insulin levels, resulting in weight gain. This means that weight gain can be a biomarker of a metabolic dysfunction rather than the cause of it. And this is funny because this links directly with the Why We Get Fat book. He talks literally about this. He's like, is it that we get fat and then we get ill, or do we get ill and then we get fat? And he basically says exactly the same thing as this. Is like the obesity itself is actually the symptom of the metabolic dysfunction. We get fat because we are ill rather than the other way around. So metabolic syndrome is the improper storage of energy in cells that are not supposed to store it. So only 3 types of cells in the body are meant to store excess energy: subcutaneous adipose tissue, so stored in the buttocks, for example, visceral adipose tissue stored in the belly, and then muscle and liver tissue, which stores excess energy as glycogen. When energy is stored in the wrong form in other cells, it can lead to metabolic dysfunction and related health issues. It is important to shift the focus from targeting obesity as the problem to addressing the underlying metabolic dysfunction. By understanding the true causes of metabolic syndrome and related health issues, we can develop more effective strategies for prevention and treatment and improve overall health outcomes. I'm sure, as we continue with these books on health and nutrition, insulin will be, or it seems to be, at least from the last 3 books I've read on similar topics, the main talking point, and the one that comes up again and again and again.
The thing that underpins most of these issues.
Exactly that. And it's, it even causes stuff like in the more immediate sense, rather than, like long-term disease, but, sugar spikes and crashes, right? For example, if somebody's feeling tired after a big meal, the insulin response is usually the reason. And glucose spikes, for example, right? Which is driven by the insulin response. So,
it's interesting, isn't it?
It's hard to ignore once you've read a few of these books. You just think, okay, hang on a second, like this is what people identify now as like the key thing. We've had science wrong in the past. Like one of the things we know from humanity is we got it wrong so many times in the past, and we keep, this is the way sort of knowledge works, right? We keep finding new sort of discoveries, new opinions, new theories which surpass the old ones, right? And the fact that this keeps coming up again and again and again, and it's not being acknowledged by the sort of mainstream, or the sort of the food producers, or whatever you want to call it, the people who produce our food supply, is quite interesting, because obviously this news kind of goes against their entire model, right? Because obviously, as we said before about the removal of the fiber reduces the insulin response. So
it's crazy. We're kind of like, I feel like we've been brainwashed to believe that like shit just happens, like people just are suddenly ill, and there wasn't like a point A that occurred, which is most likely, like we were saying before.
I just realized another one: genetics. that's a classic argument now. It's like, oh, it's not your diet, it's your genetics. It's
but
like,
that's the thing, is like, so we're just supposed to accept it rather than attacking the possible environmental issues that are causing it. And that's what she kind of talks about in this book. This
that's
Eat
a red herring. That is a red herring, isn't it?
It's a paradigm shift, right?
Because it's a red herring, just being like, you know how before it was blamed on you, like, oh, you made bad decisions. Now it's like, oh, it's not even your fault anymore. It's your genes.
But that's
like,
exactly
you can't change that. Oh wow, yeah. No,
and whose benefit is that? Well, it's the people who are selling whatever products. I mean, like, if they can say your issues have nothing to do with environmental factors,
and you can't change it, and you can't even it's
all on you, and
unchangeable.
And then here, take a pill that doesn't do anything, but just like, just treats the symptoms. It's ridiculous, right? And the idea that like, that there's no,
you're doing my favorite thing, which
point.
is you just describe, you know what I mean, you're just describing the situation, and then you realize how ridiculous everything sounds when you just like talk through what's actually happening. It's people are now blaming it on something that they can't apparently control, and they take a pill which does nothing, but they think it does something, so they feel better about themselves. But then they also eat themselves because they're like, oh, I can't do anything about it, so I'll just eat more. It's just like, whoa, okay.
It's just it's so infuriating. And like what you were just saying there before, so the non-communicable diseases, right? What's interesting is I wonder whether the reason why they don't really have labels as such is because they're outside the boundaries of what are like the beginning diseases that it then goes on to. So it's almost like doctors deal with it at this point, but this is point A, right? And so it's like, even to do with like the symptoms, right? So obesity isn't the cause, it's a symptom. So which means that things would have been starting to go wrong prior to then. Okay, it's just maybe we're not aware of, like you said, maybe we have like sugar crushes, our energy suddenly goes down, but we don't see that as like a symptom of bad nutrition. We just think it occurs, right? And so maybe a better awareness and a better knowledge of like, certain behaviors in your body or biological behaviors, then you can start to be like, okay, maybe something's about to go wrong here, and it will lead me down this road that will maybe end up with me becoming obese, but if I can tackle it now. And it's just funny because it seems like these NCDs are like things that doctors aren't even considering because they're the prior stage to the diseases that they normally will be like, oh, nothing's happening, and it's like, okay, now you're obese, now you have this, right? It's not until that point that they consider.
I was going to say as well, it was one of the primary sort of like markers for obesity to do with your, the BMR, body mass, and the BMI, sorry, body mass index, where they sort of like measure your height by your weight. But it's not like the point being here, like you just said, when you're too fat anyway, that's like it's too late. You're not catching it when it's early. Like you already got to the point where you're sick enough to actually get to the point where you put on too much fat, right? It's almost like you've missed the chance to act. Not that, I mean, obviously you can still act, right? But it's like a bit late. You can be like, oh, hang on a second. You could do some blood work and be like, hang on a second, you're looking like you're going down a slippery slope here. It's before stuff even happens.
Exactly. It doesn't make much sense.
I was going to say, do you want to cut out this bit about the LDLs? I don't really want to get too. We said this before. We don't really want to get too much into the biology.
Okay.
But the point here, I think, like at the end, was talking about how we've been focusing solely on sort of fat in the past as the sort of contributor of obesity. Like the last bit here saying the number one risk factor for heart disease is not your lower density lipoproteins, so fat, but rather insulin resistance. So triglyceride levels rather than LDLs may be a more accurate biomarker for assessing this risk, which I thought was just interesting.
Well, it's essentially going off this idea that, constantly we're bombarded with this idea that like we need to reduce our cholesterol levels, and that too salty things are really bad for us. But he kind of was, just to briefly summarize it, he was kind of saying that LDLs, so these low density lipids, there are two kinds. And so normally what's prescribed by doctors are these things called statins to reduce your cholesterol. But the issue is that actually there are two types of LDLs. There's 20% of them, I think, are these harmful ones called LDLB, I think. And those are the ones that are bad for you, but they only equate to like 20%, whereas 80% of them are these LDLA type A. And the issue is that statins reduce LDLA rather than LDLB. So even though these statins are being prescribed, they're not actually doing the trick because they're suppressing the ones that aren't actually that bad for you, and in some cases actually are quite good for you because they help you with other functions. Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting as well. I'm just talking about like the sort of statins, because I know statins are sort of like a really highly prescribed drug as well.
Mm-hmm.
This next point as well about the blood pressure. I don't know if you picked this up from the book as well, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if it's true. It's quite a big claim, but this idea that the definition of like hypertension has been changed or reduced, in line with the increase of amount of drugs that can treat hypertension. I thought that was a really,
I'm not surprised.
Really, I mean, it's like, once again, it isn't surprising, but at the same time, obviously, I'd love to. I don't know if you provide sources for that, and I don't want to take it at a whim, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, where, you know, it's saying here stuff like, over the years, the definition of hypertension has evolved. In the past, about 50 years ago, a diagnosis of hypertension was made when the systolic blood pressure was 100 plus the patient's age. For example, a systolic blood pressure of 140 was considered hypertensive for a 40-year-old. However, this threshold has been gradually lowered, with the American Heart Association being recently recommending a systolic blood pressure threshold of 125 instead of 130. This change has been influenced by the increasing availability of hypertension treatments in the market and advocacy by the pharmaceutical industry to prescribe more medications to more people, which is quite interesting. I remember something, I can't remember if it was this book or not, but it was something along the lines of, if you're a really fit athlete as well, you come up as like somebody who needs drugs to like to address your like blood levels or something. And I was like, that's actually crazy as well. Yeah, because your blood, you're on like the extreme end of, I think, something to do with like your heartbeats per minute or something like that, and they basically think you're ill.
Okay.
They can't differentiate the context. It's just like, you're ill because your blood is so like, basically in my head what it is they've done like a big study where they've worked out like the range of human, you know, the average range of what your blood pressure is meant to be, the average range of what your heart rate's meant to be, and then elite athletes are at such an extreme that they come outside of the range. So when they do a test, they're like, fucking hell, you are incredibly ill. Because that's what they define as like ill, as being outside the range of average. But the fact is, they're just super healthy. It's just like,
but think about it, like, most of these metrics can't take into consideration the context. I mean, like, go off what you were talking about with the BMI. I mean, like, a guy who's fucking built and got loads of muscle will be seen as obese.
And there is it's funny that some of these like jack dudes go like, I'm obese. It's like, okay, it's just not true, is it? Right.
It's just ridiculous.
So
on to this next book.
Go for it.
So, blood glucose. Dude, are you high? Insulin has two actions in cells. One, metabolic, which lowers glucose and stores energy, and two, cell proliferation, meaning growth and division. Every insulin molecule your pancreas makes is both good and bad for you, all at the same time. Short-term gain is blood glucose lowering, and for long-term pain, vascular dysfunction, and cancer. The point is that high blood glucose is the symptom of the disease, not the disease itself. Yet blood glucose has become so important to modern medicine because we can measure it, that even some non-diabetics are now walking around with continuous glucose monitors attached to their arms in an effort to lower their glucose excursions and therefore improve their metabolic control. Once again, this very much hammers home the point that, like, we are obsessed with the things that we can observe and we can measure. And yet most of the time, those things that we can measure are a proxy for the thing that we're trying to measure. And it's, you know, like, it's ridiculous that we use those. And it's almost like over time, the measures that we're using, we just conflate with the thing that we're trying to measure. And we just say, oh yeah, this means that you've got that. But it's like, actually it doesn't. You're inferring from these results that this is what it means for this other area. But that may not actually be the case. So glucose levels are a poor man's proxy for insulin levels, exactly what I was just saying, and not a very good one. The cost to the system of worrying about high blood glucose instead of high blood insulin aren't insignificant. And then we go on to chapter 3. So doctors need to unlearn nutrition. Does science advance one funeral at a time? This offhand comment made by German physicist Max Planck at the turn of the 20th century was based on his observation that scientists are like mafiosos. They exert a stranglehold on their fields, preventing new ideas from percolating to the surface. And like Don Corleone, you had to wait for them to die in order for science to move forward. God, I wonder how kind of true that is.
I think it's really like we've read a few books as well on like, you know, remember the Scientific Revolution book by Thomas Kuhn. The same thing, like where, you know, the paradigm shifts tend to happen when the old guard, I was gonna say dies out, but it is pretty much is like moves on from the industry, and they let like the youth or the sort of people who have no sort of previous experience come in and sort of reopen the sort of paradigms, etc. Right?
Yeah,
it's the same here, and like if you really think about it, if the food and, you know, if the advice hasn't changed in 100 years, then we're probably not doing something right, because realistically, as we discover new things should be changing. All right, like it's
I mean, it should be like that. Absolutely. So conflict or confluence of interest. There's another group of thinkers who seem unwilling to change their views as their financial interests are at stake. This seems to be particularly prevalent in the field of nutrition. In the United States, there are numerous academic medical societies, many of which overlap in their areas of focus, and all of which have political implications. Take diabetes, for example. There are multiple organizations claiming authority in this area, including the Endocrine Society, Pediatric Endocrine Society, American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, Diabetes Technology Society, and others. And lastly, the influential American Diabetes Association. These societies claim to issue clinical guidelines to establish and maintain standards of care within the medical profession. However, one might question whether their true motive is to maintain control over the narrative and discourse. And this kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, I can understand, you know, someone who's selling a product to try and convince others, but people who actually stand for guidelines, if they're not keeping up to date with, if they're not literally doing their job, right? Like, taking in the current research and updating their guidelines, I mean, that they literally are corrupt. I mean, that is pretty much the definition. Yeah. So,
especially if you look where they're being funded as well, right? Like,
oh my God. There's a bit later on in the book which was just funny, because he was like, and this organization is sponsored by all of these, and it just went on and on and on. Everyone, like, you know, the association to them. So why did the ADA, which is the American Diabetes Association, and Diabetes UK deny that sugar causes diabetes, while the International Diabetes Federation, the IDF, advocates for taxing sugar to prevent type 2 diabetes? Perhaps it's because many of the IDF's member countries are economically disadvantaged and cannot afford the costs associated with storing and administering insulin. As a result, they prioritize disease prevention by addressing food choices. I thought this was so interesting, actually, this point.
Yeah.
The idea that basically the lower socioeconomic status of like a country, the less able they are to be corrupt to a degree in that like kind of fashion. It's actually crazy when you think of it that way, that they're somewhat healthier in that area because they can't construct these means of manipulating.
I thought it was interesting too. I mean, obviously it's not proven, but it's a hypothesis, and I think it is interesting. Once again, correlation doesn't equal causation, but
no, of course,
if there was more than one, like multiple examples of the same thing happening throughout these other countries where, you know, it's not affordable, then you realize that actually is like the incentives and the economic structure that actually inhibits it and doesn't allow it, basically.
What I thought was really interesting, there was another point in this in the book where he was talking about how during the Industrial Revolution, how the focus of preventing and basically to solve something, the focus was to change the environment, but that's expensive, right? And then what happened is obviously then a product could be created where you didn't need to change the environment. Instead, you could just change the person. So by giving them a pill. So it becomes a much cheaper alternative than actually being able to, you know, having to clean all the warehouses and make sure they're all sterile and all these kinds of things. And it was just an interesting like shift in focus of like how to deal with a problem. And that's why I really liked this point, because it was like, they don't have that ability yet. So they're still focused on like changing the environment, which actually is the more beneficial thing. right? If you change the environment, well, once again, you're tackling the environmental factors rather than saying it's your issue, but we've got a product for you, you know? Going back to that red herring.
They have to focus on what the real fucking issue is.
Exactly. However, implementing similar changes in the US, UK, and Australia would require the acknowledgement that they have been wrong for decades. It may be easier for them to prescribe medications and dismiss critics. The ADA ranks 100 in term of profitable charities with annual revenue of 182 million. Sorry?
Well, that's just the statistic. How much money can a charity make? Like,
yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Like, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, like with an annual revenue of 180 million, of which 40% comes from pharmaceutical corporation donations. I mean, 40%. That's fucking crazy.
It's more to think like, is there not
85 million?
I was gonna say, is there not a conflict of interest there? Like, do you get what I mean? Like,
my God, just a little bit. Interestingly, during the period from 2002 to 2013, when the ADA declared diabetes as a treatable disease with medications, thereby expanding the market, the cost of insulin tripled. I mean, that's so fucking diabolical that, you know, they're trying to help people by like giving them medication, yet the price of it shoots up, triples. One may question whether a non-profit organization dedicated to eradicating a disease would truly want the disease to be eradicated. Despite evidence suggesting that type 2 diabetes can be prevented and treated through sugar restriction, the Diabetes Association in the US, UK, and Australia refused to acknowledge this approach and instead prefer to rely on prescription medication. Could it be because preventing diabetes would impact their financial interests and potentially put them out of business? Who knows?
Yeah, so I thought it was quite interesting as well. So, like, obviously, that was taking the more sort of bigger, what's the word? Yeah, like a societal or association based look, and then the next section was like, what's holding these clinicians back? So like the individual people rather than as you can see, the people who have $180 million charities which receive 40% of it from industry, right? So the next point is, what prevents clinicians from advocating for what's best for their patients when they know the truth? So the first obstacle is that doctors tend to be narrow-minded, which I thought was a bit rude, but okay, relying mostly on information from other doctors through journals, clinical meetings, and webinars. Unfortunately, many of these avenues are sponsored by Big Pharma to promote their products, as you can easily verify by checking the funding sources of satellite events at conferences like the ADA, which I thought was quite an interesting point. It's like, if your education comes from, it's like me learning like SEO or something from a company which sells an SEO software product. The reason why they're teaching me it is because they want me to use their product, right? It's the same sort of premise. The second challenge is that doctors are often followers, conforming to the practices of their peers. This is driven in part by the fear of receiving poor evaluations on platforms like HealthGrade if they deviate from established medical guidelines. And to be fair, I can understand that as well. You're more likely to stick out if you do something different, right? If you do something different, you kill your patient, you're fucked, aren't you, really? If you follow the guidelines, you can always be like, oh, well, I followed the guidelines. It's almost it's an insurance policy against making a mistake. And then the third hurdle is that many doctors do not listen to their patients. Instead, they do most of the talking, partly due to the constraints imposed by insurance companies, which limits patient appointments to a mere 10 minutes. As a result, clinicians tend to quickly arrive at provisional diagnoses and prescribe the most convenient and expedient treatment, whether or not it is truly the most effective option, with their hand already on the doorknob to move on to the next patient. Which is quite interesting as well. So you can see there's like three sort of powerful forces. I think it does, can you blame that? Like,
not really. I mean, like,
you can't. Like, it's just the way the system's been set up as well for them. Like, if you decide to take like a sort of rogue approach to it, you probably get fired because they'd be like, oh, why are you giving these people information or giving these people, treatments which we aren't officially allowed to do, because what we're officially allowed to do is what we've been officially taught. And what do we officially get taught? What's officially being passed down from generation to generation based upon, the pharmaceutical companies and their research, right? And like, this is not to smear at all, because some of it works, right? Like, it's just, but it's like that system obviously allows stuff which should be weeded out, right? Like, or like it allows, for narrow-mindedness. I'm not saying all of it's narrow-minded. Like, plenty of stuff has been working for years and years and years, but there's certain elements that can be narrow-minded, and we keep treating sort of like, these chronic diseases with a narrow-minded approach of, let's just solve the symptoms rather than the problem, right? Like they're not taught, like you said originally about nutrition. So it's like, how do we solve this problem? Oh, paracetamol, antibiotics, blah, blah, blah. This treatment that we've been told to give you, because that's what we've been told to do, rather than what actually will solve your problem is these lifestyle changes or whatever. And you can have this prescription as well, but you do these other things, and then in a couple of months' time, you won't need this prescription. But it's never about that. It's like, take this for 3 months, come back to me, and we'll see if you need to change the dose. Do you get what I mean? It's like,
no, exactly.
The ultimate subscription business. You get them on it, and they're on it forever, right? It's just like
absolutely. The thing is, it becomes too dogmatic, right? It almost becomes a religion in itself. And you know, we'll talk about this later on in the book, but when he talks about like the brief history of like medicine and how, you know, there were so many different disciplines, and some were like fake and some were like real, and so you had to kind of create some standardized like a discipline. But the issue is that, okay, when that system is in place for a long period of time, obviously people are going to benefit from it being in place. And if it starts to change, they don't benefit. And so it becomes this dogmatic thing, which is literally is what a religion is. Like religion is supposed to help people, but then obviously, you know, we talk about this all the time, the priests or the people at the top, you know, benefit from it being very literal and like dogmatic. And so, you can see how that's kind of transpiring in the medical context, because it's like these people feel like they have to adhere to it. The same thing goes with like, you know, education. We have this standardized education like syllabus, and teachers can't teach anything outside of it. And, you know, because the exam, right? The exam is based on that syllabus and everything like that. So it's all kind of like ropes it in. And it's difficult to lend itself to anything else. Yeah. Okay, so on to the next bit. So nutritional know-nothings. So only 28% of medical schools currently offer formal nutrition curriculum, which is even fewer than in 1977, when Congress mandated the inclusion of more nutrition science in medical education as part of the dietary guidelines. I mean, I just don't know how that happens. The primary focus of medical school education is on treatment methods such as drugs, devices, and surgery, as these tend to generate profits for physicians, Big Pharma, and medtech. In fact, many medical schools rely on funding from pharmaceutical companies to cover their operating costs. Unfortunately, patients often disregard medical advice, even when it pertains to their own health and longevity. Many struggle to make dietary or lifestyle changes, even when recommended by their doctors. Research conducted by Stanford nutritionist Christopher Gardner revealed that most dietary interventions tend to regress to the mean, with subjects returning to their previous eating habits within just 2 months of their intervention. Compounding the issue, there has been limited funding for nutrition research, leading big food companies to step in and conduct their own studies. However, these studies are often biased and more likely to support their own products, resulting in the pollution of professional journals with research that can be used to challenge the validity of established nutritional principles as unsettled science, which is, so a lot of that very vested interest, as well as, you know, kind of touching on what we were talking about in, what was the book? What was the book that we did? Good to Go, talking about, like how how the systems are set up, especially these like kind of flawed journals and things like that, that kind of just dilute it all, because they've got so much money, they can create so many studies that back up their products.
And not all research is done the same, right? Or made the same. Like you can have flaws in your study, and, you know, it can basically be meaningless because you haven't controlled like enough variables, etc. And obviously you might even get like non-statistically significant results when the placebo is just as good as your sort of treatment, right? And that seems to be the case for a lot of things. The next bit I thought was quite interesting as well, which is like who's on the hot seat. So a troubling aspect of the medical field is when professionals who think outside the box or outside the traditional box are unfairly treated as criminals by their own community. Some doctors have faced charges and accusations for providing medical advice on platforms such as radio or lectures, especially in relation to low-carb, high-fat, ketogenic diets. These charges are often brought forth by the dialectic boards of each country without any solid evidence or alleged victims of the supposed dangerous medical advice coming forward. The fact is, there is mounting evidence that sugar and processed foods are major drivers of obesity, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, fatty liver disease, and potentially even cancer and dementia. Furthermore, low-carbohydrate diets have shown promise in reversing these diseases in some cases. Despite this evidence, the medical establishment often resists re-education and instead it chooses to prosecute those who dare to challenge the status quo. I think that's just interesting. I think the fact that, you know, they react in that way under the guise of, you know, trying to protect people for their own good from these, like, what they would classify as charlatans, is an interesting response. And almost you could argue that it sort of shows they're kind of guilty to some respect, because trying to silence anything that goes against what they say. But at the same time, I can understand if they did truly believe what they said. I personally stand on, like, if it's not dangerous enough to kill you, then fucking give it a go. Like, it's
exactly. And it's like, and like, there should be some responsibility on it was funny, is like there should be some responsibility for the actual patient themselves, right? Taking something, because they're very willing to take a pill that they have no idea what is in or how it can affect their body. They're just trusting someone. But then why wouldn't they just do the same with listening to changing their diet, which really wouldn't kill you? Doesn't make much sense.
It's funny, because I was reading that legal book recently, that the law book, and what I'd say here, the argument back would be something like, you're claiming what we're saying is dangerous, but the onus is on them to prove that it is dangerous. So, like, for example, they could take you to court, but you'd be like, well, you're saying what I'm saying is dangerous. Well, prove to me that it's dangerous. Then prove to the court that that the ketogenic diet is dangerous.
Yeah.
And as long as you've actually got some solid proof, then you should be fine, right? Because they have to come through and prove it.
The thing that, like, you see a lot in, like, the medical field is that when someone goes against the, like, mainstream, like, education or criteria, is that they're basically made a scapegoat, and they're used as an example to all other, like, physicians not to go against it, because they will hammer down on one person so fucking hard. I mean, like, just taking an example, like Andrew Wakefield, right? The guy who said that vaccines lead to autism. Okay, so he is literally, I would say, the biggest kind of, like, symbol of never to go against conventional medicine teachings. And anyone who talks about it or even whispers his name, it's almost like, oh, you can't fucking talk about that. And yet obviously, like, that, like, went throughout the whole period during COVID, and then now it's like everyone's kind of changed their tune a lot because there's so much mounting evidence. But it creates another hurdle to try and, like, even think that there's any other way outside of the, like, a common prescription, right? Instead of taking a pill, maybe we should just change our diet. It's like, oh no, you can't fucking do that. You can't go against what, like, conventional medicine says. It's insane.
The amount of times convention's been wrong is probably why people should,
I mean,
distrust it as much, right?
We've been around for, like,
history.
Like, how long's modern medicine been around for? Like 120 years? I mean, fucking hell. Like, the arrogance to assume that we've already figured everything out since then. It's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? And it's why we keep making that comparison to, like, doctors being the modern day priests or shamans, because they do exactly the same job, right? They wear something funky and they give you certain things which they claim is going to work, and then, like, through magic, because you don't understand how a pill works, through magic something happens, right? It's the same premise. They, like, wave a wand at you, like, wow, like, oh, I'm better. Like, do you know what I mean? It's the same thing. You don't understand how it works. You just assume it does. Chapter 4, dietitians lost their minds. So dietitians have long relied on the notion that a patient's food intake can be calculated using a simple arithmetic approach. However, the reality is that our bodies are far more complex. The Outwater equation, which is commonly used to estimate caloric intake, fails to take into account the role of the intestinal microbiome, which metabolizes approximately 25 to 30% of the food we eat, as well as the impact of dietary fiber on this process. Fiber, while not contributing any calories to the total, can significantly alter the percentage of calories absorbed, resulting in a discrepancy between the number of calories eaten versus the number metabolized. In 1921, the discovery of insulin was a breakthrough for diabetes treatment, as it allowed for carbohydrates to be reintroduced into the diet of the diabetics and made treatment easier. However, it also shifted the focus from prevention to treatment, and the high-fat paradigm for managing diabetes was largely abandoned. One thing that can be stated unequivocally is that despite the undeniable decline in American health for the last 50 years, the message from organizations such as the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, I guess that's how you pronounce it, has remained largely unchanged for the past 100 years. Instead of addressing systemic issues, the blame is often shifted onto the patients, with claims of non-compliance with medical and dietary advice by the entire healthcare establishment. And that's quite funny. That is, if you think about it, like, things will be getting worse, but there's no change in the guidelines.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then they put the blame on, they're not following the guidelines. But it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's anybody can say that, right? Like, it's like I can produce something which I say I was going to help you or whatever, and then it doesn't work out for you. Oh, you didn't follow it. Even if you did, I didn't follow it. Didn't work out. Oh, well, you didn't do it properly. It's just like, well, that's not an argument, really.
Yeah, it's unfalsifiable.
Prove it.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's stressful. And then I just remember this chapter 5 about the dentist. So
yeah,
we don't have to go too much in detail on this. I only took it because I thought it was quite interesting, talking like the main touching point was this idea that dental sort of cavities have increased since the amount of carbohydrates we eat and sugar. And I thought it was really interesting that there's a link between the two. And I never heard of it before, that there was a link, and that there was a believed link between the two. And obviously stuff like Coca-Cola, which is even worse then, because not only is it the carbohydrates and sugar that's going to feed the bacteria in your mouth, but it's also the acid that's going to burn through the protective layers. So it's like a double whammy.
No, exactly. Like, I think it's really interesting because a lot of even this current book that I'm reading, Deep Nutrition, there is a strong connection between your mouth health and your body health, because realistically anything that you're eating is going to go through the mouth first, and then it's going to hit your organs later on. And so there's a connection between like how many cavities people have and their organ function or their metabolic syndromes. And I think it's really interesting. A lot of like kind of, it always goes back to this guy called Weston Price, who was like a dentist during like the early 1900s, and he kind of was like one of the first to basically go to a lot of these like hunter-gatherer societies around the world and look at their like dental structure and their like teeth health and everything like that, and realize that because they hadn't adopted a Western diet, that they were still unbelievably healthy, that their mouth had evolved properly, it was wide enough, which meant that like, and it had like a good structure. It also meant like because of the foods that they were eating, their tongues were strong, so they would stay to the roof of their mouth, which meant that like they weren't mouth breathers, they didn't have sleep apnea, they didn't have all these other issues, all because they didn't have like this Western diet. And realistically then it was like, well, is it high salt or is it a lot of sugar? And it's like realistically it was because of these high carbs and sugar in the diet, in the Western diet, which is contributed, and obviously these processed foods as well, that have contributed to all these issues. So I think there's a strong connection between,
it was a really interesting chapter. It was kind of like it was a random chapter in a way, but
it was a bit
trying to put because obviously it's not even talking about the processed food, it's kind of just talking about the high carbohydrate diet and how it's really affecting our teeth health. And then it talks a lot about fluoride and how fluoride, we become like over reliant on it, and that it's not actually that good for you, etc.
Well, fluoride is actually a byproduct of I think it's like actually I want to know what it is. It's going to annoy me otherwise because once you know what it's like a byproduct of, byproduct of aluminium, fertilizer, and iron ore manufacturing.
No shit, okay.
So apparently, like, I don't know, these are just claims I've heard, but fluoride, think about it, like what he talks about in this book, right? When they've got a product and they're processing it, wouldn't it be amazing if you could turn that product into 10 different products, right? So you have a fruit, or you have a vegetable,
the waste product becomes a product, right? Like,
exactly, right? And so in this case, they basically capitalize.
Like my rubbish becomes your product, sort of thing,
100%. And so fluoride is supposedly that, and that, like, that's why it was introduced into water. It's a very clever idea because it was like they were able to capitalize on these byproducts, these waste products.
That's slightly concerning, but
it's very concerning. Like, I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's just I've heard that.
That's slightly concerning. I'll have to be careful.
I think it's also interesting when we consider that, like, brushing is also a new thing, and toothpaste, right? Like, that wasn't something at the beginning of the 1900s. It wasn't a common.
It's funny, isn't it, as well? Because I feel like with we've been almost told now as well that, I mean, what you said earlier about the hunter-gatherers and their teeth health kind of like debunks it. But, we have these constant images now of like these people in the past must have had the most fucked up teeth. Like, no braces, nothing. Their teeth must have been everywhere. Like, they would have been rotten, gone by the time they're 20. But the reality is they weren't at all. And it's just like, okay, well, surely evolution would have given you something where like it's self-sustaining. Like, you don't just lose all your teeth by the age of like 30 and then can't eat, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Therefore, your body has some sort of mechanism to keep them clean and, you know, I guess, what's the word? Just a sustainable environment within your mouth, right? And therefore, the sort of the prevalence of some of the stuff that we're experiencing as a society it's got to be caused by some of the lifestyle changes that are different between us and hunter-gatherers, right?
Yeah. No, exactly.
But you almost sell the toothpaste and stuff by basically saying, oh, if you don't brush your teeth, you're going to lose your teeth. It's like, oh, okay.
And imagine if the thing that is being put into the water, such as fluoride, is actually the opposite, right? And then it justifies having that product then to help brush your teeth, right? Because here I think he said, so after the government stepped in and fluoride began to be added to the drinking water worldwide, this had unintended consequences. Dentists began to express concerns, lamenting, if we eliminate dental caries, who will fill our chairs? Preventing caries are basically fillings, cavities. Preventing cavities became a public health issue for countries, but promoting cavities became an economic issue for dentists and big business. This led to the proliferation of toothpaste, mouthwashes, dental x-rays, and sealants, all marketed to promote dental health. So it's like, it's very difficult to not see that, someone's always benefiting. And that doesn't mean that, it's always being done maliciously or vested interest, although, it's difficult to separate the two sometimes.
For sure. So I think what we'll do now is we'll finish this chapter, man, and we'll get to part 2, and then we'll do part 2 on another podcast if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I remember this chapter being, like going deeper into the rabbit hole. And so chapter 6, because Big Pharma was their teacher, the birth of Big Pharma. And I thought this is really fucking interesting. I just, once again, I'm taking this guy's word for it. I'm always going to prefix stuff with this because I don't know how true it is, but if it's true, it's interesting. So the Flexner Report is widely regarded by medical experts as a turning point in the evolution of evidence-based medicine. In the 19th century, medical practice in the United States were unregulated, with snake oil salesmen peddling dubious remedies and cocaine and heroin available without prescription. Medical schools had varying curricula and lacked standardization. In 1897, Frederick Gates, an avid reader, came across Osler's book, The Principles and Practice of Medicine, and recognized the chaos in the American medical profession. He believed that American medicine needed the same kind of discipline that Rockefeller brought to Standard Oil, and urged Rockefeller to fund the establishment of a medical institute in his name. Rockefeller saw an opportunity in coal tar, a byproduct of coal mining, which was used by medical practitioners at the time to treat skin disease. He founded the Rockefeller Institute to conduct medical research, as long as it focused on the benefits of coal tar, to create a mass market for his product. By the early 1900s, the pharmaceutical industry had emerged, with drugs such as aspirin, salvarsarin, used for syphilis. Okay, that's a nice little bit of information. And Novocaine. Rockefeller recognized this as a new opportunity, but realized that American physicians were not familiar with these new pharmaceuticals due to gaps in their medical education. He initiated a project to evaluate and revamp the American school system to prioritize medical research and drug therapy, with the American Medical Association becoming the regulatory body for medical education. In 1910, Flexner published his Flexner Report, which criticized American medical education for its lack of evidence-based medicine, a critique that is echoed even today. He advocated for comprehensive reforms in medical training. Flexner was skeptical of any medicine that wasn't based on research, dismissing them as quackery, although some of it was indeed questionable. Notably, nutrition was overlooked in the new medical curriculum, as neither of the Flexner brothers saw it as profitable. The Flexner Report caused controversy, resulting in the closure of many rural medical schools and complementary alternative therapy schools. Rockefeller, Pridgett, and the AMA presented the Flexner Report to Congress in 1911, and it was adopted without changes. However, the report has never been updated since. It aligned with Flexner's, the AMA's, and Johns Hopkins' ambitions to establish preeminence among American medical schools, as well as the nascent pharmaceutical industry's objectives, including those of Rockefeller. Which is just once again interesting if that's like the origins of the medical standardization. Because at the end of the day, think about it, at some point people had to come and go like, right, let's just make the education standardized, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to have a bunch of people who are willing to admit that certain things are right, and unless they actually had a position of actually searching for truth, like they cared, like if their value hierarchy was truth above everything else, that's when the truth's going to come out, right? And this is the thing I think, which is the only thing that makes me kind of sit with this book and think, actually, do you know what? Maybe there is not nefarious shit, but people just like looking out for themselves and nobody else. Because for me, at least, you can tell, can't you, what people value? And like, if the truth is not your top list of values, and like maybe something like power or money is, then you're gonna act in ways that maximize those over truth. And to be honest, I can imagine a lot of very smart, like sort of psychopathic people might even think something along the lines of like, well, truth's kind of relative because everybody thinks differently. Therefore, I'm going to create the truth, because if I don't create it, nobody else will, and I'm going to benefit from it. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think they even need to go that far. I mean, like, there are just so many people who just don't believe in the truth anyway. I mean, like,
it's like a nihilistic view, isn't it? It's like there's no such thing as truth,
it is. Like,
therefore,
a good to go book.
Have a good life. Yeah.
All the people that basically manufacturing fake science to back up a product. I mean, once again, like Rockefeller, according to this, did that exact same thing with, highlighting the benefits of coal tar. So obviously that's not. It's really funny, isn't it? It's like
the rules of the game being set, and they just play the rules of the game to benefit themselves.
Yeah. And think about it,
creating evidence, and the evidence can be not just, I'm not saying they're forging evidence, but you can create studies that, as we said, like fake studies and fake journals that make it look like you're doing the, the work.
Exactly. And like, you're right. We did need some kind of standardized. I mean, like, it was inevitable anyway. We adhere to standardized metrics all the fucking time, but we did kind of need that, especially to like act as a foundation to then build scientific research off of. But and I'm not neglecting the fact that there are probably loads of health, types of health that probably didn't have any research behind. But once again, like a lot of that shit doesn't, because it's placebo effect, right? Like we've literally talked about that in good to go. So a lot of it was probably all placebo, and a lot of it now is probably all placebo. But the fact is that someone is going. This guy Flexner has supposedly read up on all the different types of health and fit health, and then said, these are all rubbish, this stays. I mean, we're trusting one guy to like basically his report saying this is legit and this isn't. I mean, who knows what this guy was like, what his values were, like you were saying, and then using the structure of this, tycoon Rockefeller, who's incredible in business, who's probably loved money and power, and then suddenly takes it to Congress. I mean, we all know what like lobbying is like, and really rich people in Congress, and then suddenly it gets passed through and it's like standardized. So I'm hypothesizing here, but the fact is that there are loads of holes here where you can say, okay, I can see where this might have gone wrong, and then 100 years down the line we're so far from where we were originally. And obviously some of it is good and some of it is diverged, like you said. Like why did this guy think that nutrition was something that was irrelevant, right? Like
you said, it was unprofitable, but that's his speculation.
Speculation.
But unless they got him writing literally in paper like, I don't think it's profitable, let's not do it. Do you get what I mean? But like he's being guided by profit in his other decisions,
of
right?
course,
therefore that's why he's extrapolated, being like, of course it's not the same.
So, but it is like, I did find that chapter really fascinating, or that part in particular fascinating, because I have heard a lot about Rockefeller and the development of like modern medicine through his kind of like policies. But particularly interesting. Yeah.
So then the next part is the Big Pharma on the Rampage. And this is also a very interesting point. So the marketing budget of every major pharmaceutical company surpasses its research and development budget. In fact, some companies like Johnson & Johnson allocate double the amount of their R&D budget for marketing purposes. The underlying business strategy of Big Pharma revolves around maximizing profits by generating multiple products from a single drug, which I thought was interesting. Like, I remember seeing something like, in Nurofen, they have like a headache version or like an extra strong version, which is just the same. It's literally the same, but they just call it like extra strong.
I think they legally have to add something, but what they add could be like anything. It could be like the tiniest relevant thing.
I think it's like caffeine or something. So your head, but fair, sorry. But it's interesting because they keep the same product, but like you said, they change small things, and obviously it's targeting specific things. So this is achieved through various means, such as creating minor variations of the drug to extend its patent life, employing clinical trial administration and research publication, engaging in regulatory lobbying, conducting physician and patient education, setting drug pricing, and utilizing advertising and point-of-use promotion to establish unique marketing profiles and foster brand loyalty among similar products. This approach is adopted to counter the lower cost of generic drugs. By making slight modifications to the ingredient list, they can retain additional time for the patent protection, which is also interesting how they can change the ingredients slightly, get patent protection. And it's funny, isn't it, how like all these drug companies tend to like not drop, but they're very protective over their, like IP, and then they kind of like give up on stuff that eventually becomes open to the public, right?
Yeah. And I think I remember us having a conversation on a podcast once. I can't remember what book it was from or whether we were even talking about a book, but we were saying how like different pharmaceutical companies will have very similar drugs, but they can't, they'll sue the other one if it's exactly the same. And so rather than work together to literally make a drug that would be the point of the drug, which would to be, have the best benefit, really they just have to change it. So they're introducing other chemicals just for the sake of their like own brand's version of a headache pill, which is just flawed. I mean, like goes against the core of health, right? The core principles of health. Like you're trying to help someone, but here it's like, well, no, we've got a brand to think about first, and so we need to add other chemicals that probably impair it. So on to the next bit. So polypharmacy kills people. So in the United States, individuals aged 65 and above make up 16% of the population and account for 1/3 of all prescription drug consumption. Shockingly, 20% of seniors in this age group are taking 5 or more medications. Similarly, in the United Kingdom, this age group constitutes 18% of the population and consumes nearly 45% of all prescription drugs. Numerous prospective studies on this subject, though mostly limited in scope to specific regions, have arrived at a damning conclusion. Polypharmacy, defined as the use of 5 or more drugs daily, is linked to an increased risk of mortality. Notably, this risk is not solely attributable to age. In fact, prescription medications are currently the 3rd leading cause of death. I mean, I'm not fucking surprised. While doctors are trained to prescribe medications in medical school and serve as the primary prescribers, they are also targeted by Big Pharma's educational campaigns. At present, a staggering 70% of the US population is taking at least one prescribed medication. That's fucking insane. That's 70%. I mean,
because it'd be something, wouldn't it? Be like ADHD, depression.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
anxiety,
so basically, if you're not dying of something health related, old age, it's something to do with mental health, or something to do with like focused attention, which is funny. We talked about the myth of mental illness and stuff from ages ago, right? It's funny because one of their business models as well is make problems out of sensations or feelings, or make problems out of things that that we all feel, so to speak.
Exactly. And it's like, think about people taking drugs for mental illnesses as well as physical illnesses. I mean, like here it says, does this imply that 70% of the population is unwell? Surprisingly, yes. In reality, it is estimated that 88% of the population suffers from metabolic illnesses. However, does that necessarily mean that medication is the only solution? I mean, like here, that suggests that, 88% are suffering from metabolic illnesses, but I doubt all the 70% are taking pills just for metabolic illnesses, right? Some might be taking it, like you said, for anxiety, depression, or whatnot. And then on top of that, then they might be taking something.
There's a pill for everything, bro.
Exactly.
Pill for everything.
And then that starts to increase this polypharmacy, doesn't it? This idea of taking more pills all at once. I mean, once again, do you think they've ever done studies to suggest what would it be like if someone was on anxiety pills and this? Let's do a study on that. I guarantee you they fucking haven't. Because think about how many studies you'd have to be. You don't know what people are on, and you don't know how these two things
that classic, isn't it? There's like that mathematical formula where you start putting variables together.
Yeah.
Like, and how many times you have to like test them all together, and you, like, even if you have like 4 or 5, you end up with thousands, right?
Ridiculous.
It's like, they're never testing it for sure.
Absolutely never. So according to Big Pharma, the answer is a resounding yes. Since the government's withdrawal from medical research, the pharmaceutical industry has gained significant influence and freedom to operate.
Yeah. So next, I mean, this links exactly to what was just said. So who funds medical research? So most government and university-backed clinical research has been significantly reduced, leaving a gap that Big Pharma has exploited to prioritize profits over public health. However, the reality of Big Pharma's own research reports is highly questionable. A meta-analysis conducted by the Cochrane, I guess it is. Cochrane, is it? Okay. Institute revealed that studies sponsored by Big Pharma often had less transparency, disregarded methodological limitations, and drew more favorable conclusions compared to independently funded studies evaluating the same drugs. And this reminds me of that good to go statistic where something like the moment they had independent research or something, or they were held accountable for like bad results, something, the amount dropped by like 40%. I can't remember what it was exactly, but So in recent years, Big Pharma has primarily focused on extending the lives of chronically ill patients, such as those with cancer or diabetes, to maximize profits. The lack of governmental regulation has allowed drug prices to skyrocket, with some medicines that have been around for decades tripling in price within a decade. Big Pharma relies heavily on doctors to prescribe their drugs, as only a small portion of their profits come from over-the-counter medications. To maintain this relationship, Big Pharma exerts control over medical school curricula by providing funding and resources. This perpetuates a vicious cycle where doctors are trained to prioritize treatment over prevention or cure due to the influence of Big Pharma in medical education. In summary, Big Pharma's influence on clinical research, pricing medications, and medical education has resulted in a symbiotic yet uneasy relationship with doctors, where profits often take precedence over public health. And it's really funny because this over-the-counter point is so true. Like, I cannot name the last time I went to like a pharmacy or anything and bought something.
Yeah.
Like if I was ill, right? And to be honest, I'm not often very ill, to be honest. But the only other time I usually take stuff like that is because I go to the doctor and they've been like prescribe me something, and therefore I would assume most people are the same because we didn't know how to diagnose our own problems, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, obviously, for them, Big Pharma or whoever's selling the drugs needs to infiltrate or educate the doctors on why their drug's the drug of choice because it just makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
And they speak in the language of medical research, right? And if you can just create research that backs up your products, and they don't speak the language of not everybody's gonna, let's say you do like what's the word? Like an event showcasing your new drugs. You're not gonna, you're gonna show them sources, but how often do people actually go into the sources that people provide and actually check out? Like nobody fucking does it.
Yeah.
Like maybe some do, to be fair. Like don't get me wrong, some probably do, but I reckon most people take it at face value because there's got to be some level of trust, otherwise the world doesn't get around, right?
It's fascinating, and I think it kind of ties in a bit with the myth of mental illness. When he talks about like the psychiatrist that interprets symptoms. Well, in this case, not only are doctors heavily focused on prescribing and treatment, but when they see a patient and they're interpreting that patient's symptoms, they're interpreting it through a lens that is funded by Big Pharma. Right. That is also heavily influenced on treating.
It's like I know the you give me these symptoms. Oh, I've been trained to know that these symptoms link to this drug.
Yeah.
Or these symptoms lead to this disease.
Exactly.
Which I have a drug for.
Yeah.
And once again, who defines diseases? The medical establishment.
And then that definition grows accordingly. Remember what was it?
Like as we said before, like the systolic blood pressure, hypertension. Because what's funny is I always think about it a lot actually when I'm like dealing with like McDonald's, for example, because they operate at such scale. Like all these big companies that operate at scale, if they just increase prices by like 2p, they massively increase their profits.
Yeah,
because 2p times like 20 million.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Like so, like if they can just increase anything by a couple of p or whatever at any point, there it just increases exponentially. It's just like I always think of these like small changes they'll make, but
it's crazy. So and onto this last part. So disease A plus treatment B still equals death. Medicines are essentially selective toxins that target specific pathways in the body, poisoning them to achieve their intended effects. The success of antibiotics in the 1950s, which targeted bacteria without harming human cells, led to the growth of the pharmaceutical industry and the eradication.
Eradication.
Oh wow, God, I can't believe I couldn't read that.
No, it's one of those things like a mind blanket.
Eradication of many acute infectious diseases. God, it makes me feel dumb. However, when it comes to chronic conditions, the dysfunctional pathways are often within human cells, particularly in the mitochondria, which are responsible for energy metabolism. Unfortunately, there are no medications that can effectively target and fix mitochondrial issues. In fact, the use of antibiotics for acute infections may have disrupted the balance of bacteria in the gut, leading to the emergence of new and resistant bacteria. That's really interesting, isn't it? So like antibiotics, they help pathways, but they don't affect human cells. But with issues that surround human cells, well, then what's the fucking point of taking antibiotics?
Yeah. It does make sense, of course.
Yeah, it does. I didn't think about it that way. By focusing solely on alleviating the symptoms of diseases, the pharmaceutical industry has created a false sense of security for patients without addressing the underlying causes. There is no quick fix or pill to address the root cause of chronic conditions.
Yeah. I was going to say to you, like, that in itself is almost like self-explanatory. The fact that the pharmaceutical industry has been around for this amount of time and things have got worse, not better, surely indicates that, it's not working. If you think about how can they even argue their interventions are working? Because they're not interventions, they're treatments, right? Yeah. But funny enough, the word treatment itself isn't the word intervention, right? Therefore, they're not intervening; they're just treating what currently exists.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
it's just
and they're in the they're in the business of obviously people being ill. Because if people weren't ill, they wouldn't be in business, right? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it was that thing you were saying before. It's like, they'd be putting themselves out of business if they sold it.
Which is, it's a very cynical way to look at it. But, if you think about it, like, from that perspective, it would make sense that the best interests of everybody else's health aren't, their best interests.
Yeah.
And that's the irony of the whole thing, because they're meant to be there to help everybody's best interests health-wise, right?
Yeah,
but the reality is they don't actually treat health issues. They treat like the chronic issues after the health's gone bad, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was the first part of the book, which was covering sort of one of the immoral hazards, which is the Big Pharma. So next, I think we'll go on to part 2 when we do the next podcast, which is the chronic diseases. So going deep into what chronic diseases are and what causes them, etc. And I'm trying to think what else is after that. Then we got. Let's have a little look. We got part 3. So notes from the nutritional battlefield. So this is, I believe, was like the battles that are going about what is a carb. What actually is nutrition? What is defined as healthy? That's a super interesting chapter.
Yeah.
And is there another part 4?
I think there is.
There must be.
Yeah. Food fight. So food classifications and food alterations, those kind of things.
So that was, I think that's the last part. I think. Yeah, cool. So we'll try and fit as many in as possible. Like, as we said before at the beginning of this podcast, it was like a very long book. I think this could be a 2-3-parter, maybe even 4 parts, with maybe a shorter instead of like 2 hours long ones, just an hour and a half each part. And just, so that's the first part. If you're interested in hearing more, look out for part 2. I'm sure we'll be probably recording that this weekend or something similar to that. And stay tuned. And that's a wrap.
That is a wrap. Hey guys, well there you have it. We hope you enjoyed that book summary. Now we know it can be a lot to take in all at once, so if you want to be able to read this in a more palatable size, or you want to be able to implement any of those key actionable ideas that we were talking about in this episode, head on over to our website at wisewords.blog, where the book summary will be waiting for you. Also, don't forget to check out our socials, as we consistently upload the key ideas, benefits, and actionable ideas from all the books that we read. The links to those will be in the description below. Now, we want to be able to get you the best content in a way that's really easy to understand, but we need your help. Your opinion matters. So you are our feedback mechanism. And with those quick actions, whether that's leaving us a like or a dislike, commenting in the comment section below, or subscribing to our channel, all of those help us gauge what we're doing well and how to improve on our method of delivery. So if you have any thoughts on the matter, don't hesitate to act. It takes less than 10 seconds and it really helps us out. But with all that being said, until next time, stay wise.